Be just a nice little cozy chit chat.
Now we got to actually put some substance into this so that we're not just
Wasting people's time.
laughing at each other.
Yeah, exactly. No, man, I was thinking about.
Are we rolling now already?
It's recording right now, but
Okay.
we can ease into this. So we've known each other for a long time, for a good while.
Yep.
I probably remember talking to you before you remember talking to me. So long before New Record Day.
Could be.
I once called GR Research because I bought the AV123 Mini Stratas, I think is what they were called, or Mini
Okay. Yep.
Strata Mini, something like
Strata
that.
Minis, yeah.
Yeah, Strata Minis. And the woofer died on it, and I was trying to pry it out. Somebody literally rubber cemented the woofer in there.
Wow.
So I had to destroy it to get it out, right? And it was already broken, so I didn't care. But I called you, and you were like, "Yeah, man. Well, that's crazy. All right, well, I got those drivers. I can send you one." You're like, "Oh, rubber cement. Why would they do that?"
Yeah.
You haven't changed much over the years.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just happened to have some of those left over from whenever I did the design work. I didn't stock any other drivers or anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you lucked out.
I lucked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to do like an interview with you because I know you well and I've known you for a long time, and I've seen you grow your channel into what it is today. And because I edit your videos, I get to see them first, right? I get first view of it. And then I kind of predict what the comments are going to look like. It's like, how is this one going to go?
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to address or talk to you about or get your thoughts, because this has been like one common thing that has come up time and time again. And it is, I guess, the argument from the other side of the table of it's artwork. Like their crossover is their art. What right do you have to go in there and manipulate it and change it and rearrange it? Right. You're destroying their art. Like that was intentional artwork, creative artwork. Look, I want to be sensitive to that thought process because I think I understand where they're coming from. Like they might think like these designers had a vision, an idea, and they put it to work, right?
Right.
What are your thoughts on this?
Rarely is that really the truth.
Yeah.
You know, you have some guys here in the U.S. that put their heart and soul into designing whatever it is, you know, like Clayton, for instance.
Yeah.
You know that he spent time listening to each part that's in that crossover, and he's designed it specifically the way he wants it to sound.
Yeah.
But most of the speakers people send in for me to upgrade, that's not the case at all.
It's not what they... Yeah.
No, that stuff. They've calculated some values on that thing. I'm surprised if a lot of them are even measured. Maybe some of them are, but there's no heart and soul built into most of that. It's mass produced, mass marketed, and it's a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
You know, and they've got price points they're trying to hit.
Yeah.
And they've got pennies, you know, on the dollar to put into each part, and that's just the way that stuff's made.
Yeah.
You know, you have to get outside of those budget price points to really get into some stuff that was really designed well.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's some still that, even at the budget levels, they'll hire a designer like ELAC, for instance.
Yeah.
They hire Andrew to go through each model and design it. And you can tell they all measure really well.
Yeah.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
When you start measuring something and you see that the drivers aren't in phase. You know, there's a big hole that they don't sum.
Yeah.
Or you see a bunch of woofer breakup and they didn't do anything to address any of that problem.
Right.
It's just ringing.
Right.
You know, that wasn't someone's heart and soul.
Yeah.
That's just mass produced.
Yeah.
You know.
See, I think this, you just hit the nail on the head, and this is kind of what I wanted to start to unpack, is I think people react in a way and they get angry and upset because they don't actually understand, and that's human nature. Something that we don't understand,
right.
Sometimes we get upset and we get angry. But I think what you just said is exactly what, it's been a mirror image of what I've noticed and what I've seen is, in a perfect world, we would all be, well, not me, but you would be, starting from scratch, designing these speakers, working on them, getting the crossovers right, getting the phase relationship right, finishing by fine-tuning and listening and making some last-minute adjustments. But that's not what's actually happening. And if anything, what I have seen in your videos is you've been very fair with every single kudos you've given, and at the same time you've shared the same discipline of, this is an actual issue, this is an actual problem,
right,
that should have been fixed. So it's not like, hey, I want to attack this company, or I want to make people feel bad. It's not about feelings or anything like that. It's like you said, phase relationship between a woofer and a tweeter, and it's a mess. It's like, that can't be art. No. It's not possible for it to be art.
They didn't do that on purpose.
Nobody was sitting there for hours on end like, guys, come and listen to this. Come and listen to this. It sounds great. They weren't doing it, and I suspect that you're probably right, that what it is that they were, hey, we got a budget, we got a target, we got some calculations. Maybe they farmed off whoever was doing the crossover work to begin with, and go.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all that's put into it. I mean, and it's different for each company, of course. I've got some more ATCs in there. The ATC.
Hold on. I'm going to turn off this noise gate. Give me a second here.
It's kind of making us cut in and out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm noticing it too. I don't even think we need it on because it's pretty quiet in here. Okay. Gone. All right.
I can hear the background. I can hear the room noise a little bit.
A little bit of room noise now, but that's all right.
That's probably better. But anyway, I've had those. I got those ATCs in. That's the second pair I've had in. Had the Model 11s, now the 19s. You can tell they put a lot of effort into designing the drivers, designing the crossover.
Okay.
And they didn't go overboard on the parts quality or anything, but
right,
solidly designed.
Yeah. In terms of voicing and what you can. So this is a great question then. As you begin to work on a speaker, it doesn't take long for you to realize or to know somebody actually put some work into this.
Oh, yeah.
You just know, okay.
Oh, you can see it immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, you run it the whole spectrum of measurements there, and you not only have a smooth response, but you don't see any problems.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. A lot of speakers that come through, I'd say probably 80% of them have some kind of problem. They've got an issue that any real designer would have addressed and fixed rather than send it out that way.
Yeah.
But there's some good companies out there.
You've been around since 98, right? 97, 98?
We started in 95.
95.
It became a full-time gig for me in about 98, yeah.
Did you, in terms of speaker modifications, upgrades, was that always a part of the business, or did that come later down the line?
It kind of came later. I mean, my partner and I at first set out to design some better quality loudspeakers at a price point where they dominated those price points in the market. And we thought, because we were naive, that if we built a better mousetrap, then everyone would buy it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what the market was about. It wasn't about having the best product. It was about having a product that the store was willing to sell.
Yeah.
And they have price points.
Margins.
And and they don't like you blowing those price points.
Yeah.
If they've got speakers at, below 1,000, then at 1,500, 3,000, 6,000, and you come in there with a mini monitor that's 1,000 and it beats up on the rest of the product line. I feel good going in and demoing it thinking, well, it sure sounded better than all those speakers.
Yeah.
That was not a plus.
That wasn't a good thing.
No. I had a store owner tell me, if somebody comes in here willing to spend $6,000 on a pair of loudspeakers, they are never going to hear your speakers. I'm going to sell them a $6,000 speaker. And so I realized then the stores weren't so much interested in the product. It was the consumers that want the value. the stores that were selling the product, they weren't interested in selling value. They were interested in selling what they can make money on.
Wow.
So and then we came back from the Consumer Electronics Show, did a big exhibit there.
Yeah.
And could kind of see the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And thought, and the internet thing was just merging.
Yeah.
We're just emerging.
Yeah.
And decided maybe we should sell these as kits.
Yeah.
And target a DIY market. That way we could kind of reach the consumer direct. And it was kind of slow going at first. It wasn't like we were I didn't start doing mods like you asked originally.
Right.
It just kind of came.
Okay.
People started bringing stuff in. Other companies started bringing in product, wanting me to evaluate it or measure it or test it. And
how did they find out about you? Like back then, I mean, how was it? Just word of mouth?
Kind of one thing leads to another. I had a company come to me and had me design some big line sources.
Okay.
It was Epiphany Audio. And they won some major awards at the Absolute Sound and got fantastic show coverage at the Consumer Electronics Show. And people took note of that. They're like, wow, whoever designed those did a really good job.
Yeah.
And then, slowly but surely other companies started coming to me.
Yeah.
And bringing me product and wanting me to design product lines. And, some of them were pretty big companies. And so I was kind of became a gun for hire.
Yeah.
Not because I set out to be that, but
it just happened that way.
Just happened that way. It's just like when you start out new record day, you never know what you're going to review or who you're going to be interviewing or
no.
It just
no clue.
As you build up credibility, you get bigger and bigger companies come to you wanting stuff.
Right. Over the years, as you've been offering, kits and you've been having all of these speakers come in the door and you've been working on them, have there been standout companies, like specific companies that you feel as a whole usually get it right?
Not a lot, but there have been a few that not only always sound good at the shows, but even when I test and measure their speakers, they look good. Like Colossus work from Odyssey. I've had some of Colossus speakers in. A little Kismet, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. He did a nice job. I told the customer, I said, we can tweak a few parts. We can upgrade some of this. Or I could design a new network that has a little steeper slopes that balance it a little more. But it's pretty good. It's the way it is. I don't see any reason to do much to it.
Yeah.
And there's companies like that.
Got it. Let's tackle one of the big ones, because this comes up a lot. And in your most recent video that we just released today, you touched on this. And I've wanted to talk to you about it in a video that actually addresses this, because this, I think, is a big one.
Okay.
Why aren't you listening to these loudspeakers? He doesn't even listen to these loudspeakers before he goes in and he starts changing parts.
Right.
Maybe you don't even change what they did. You're just changing the parts out for higher quality parts. How in the heck does he, people have a hard time with that.
People have a hard time with it.
And I want to give you just a moment to clear the air as to, are you being lazy, Danny? Is that what it is?
No,
you're being lazy.
It's so much of that stuff at this point, it's a given.
Yeah.
It's like I've said, you go out and get in your car and the tires are low. You know exactly what's going to happen when you get in. You don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to go put air in it and go for a drive and then take the air pressure back down and drive and try to figure it. It's like, did it really drive better with the correct air pressure?
Right.
It's the same thing. I mean, I've spent hundreds and thousands of hours comparing all those different parts.
Yeah.
Like when I design our product, it starts, at conception through measurements, and then I'll go through such a listening process of comparing parts. Does this Sonic cap sound better than this Hovland cap or this Ari cap? There's been a time where I've gone back and forth and I'm listening.
Trying to decide which one is the way to go. Yeah.
And you can easily tell the differences between the two or the three or whatever you're comparing. It's the same with the wire, with the inductors, and you name it. I've spent so much time comparing those parts, and you realize this particular part has a particular sound.
Yeah.
This capacitor that's a Benick polycap has a certain performance level, and that's it. You know,
Okay.
it's going to smear the signal to some degree, and you're not going to get the resolution you'd get out of it from a higher quality cap.
Okay.
You know, even stepping up to some of the Mundorf and different things like all those caps are step ups, you know, various levels in performance. And
Yeah.
of course, I've kind of favored the Sonic caps, and for the money, I don't feel like I've found anything better. If I did, I'd be carrying it.
Yeah.
And then there's levels above that. You get into like some of the Jupiter caps, and
Dueland and
Dueland and MyFlex, all those copper foil caps, and wow, those things can sound really lush and just drippy gooey, you know,
Yeah.
just musical without giving up detail or anything like that. So you learn all of how those things sound when you put them into the signal,
Yeah.
you know. And so when you know you're switching out an electrolytic cap for a poly cap, we've already done that 100 times. We already know what's going to happen and where it's going to happen and how it's going to affect the imaging and the soundstage.
Yeah.
You know, we put that Sonic cap in there, and then we bypass it with a MyFlex copper foil cap. We know that all of a sudden those spatial cues that are in way up there in those top octaves are all going to come through now unsmeared, unaffected, and you're going to hear suddenly the layering in the soundstage and the depth and the width, and there's just a whole bunch of things there that are all givens at this point. So we know when we take this group of parts out and we replace it with this group of parts, we already know what the effect is going to be.
Yeah.
You know, we've done
You've
that.
been down the road so many times.
Been down the road. It's over and over.
You've
and
driven
over.
with the flat tires, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
okay.
it doesn't handle well, doesn't ride well on the flat tires. So, and then there's times still I'll listen to a lot of that stuff, or I'll hook up something because I want to hear how the drivers sound. I'll just run a lead over from the shop, you know, computer over there with whatever we're playing. I'll listen to some things sometimes, but
Yeah.
for the most part, I mean, it's just like the drivers themselves. You know that a horn speaker is going to have a bit of a horn sound.
Yeah.
You know that a metal dome tweeter is going to have a bit of a metal dome sound versus a softer dome tweeter. The
Right.
metal cone versus a paper cone.
Absolutely.
You can easily you already know because you spent so much time A/B-ing that stuff what those differences are, and you also know how those parts are going to react to those types of drivers. You know, if you have something that's a bright sounding horn or something like that, then there's certain types of components you don't want to match with it. You want to match parts with it that are going to match with well, like the Focal stuff. We used to be a Focal distributor when we first got into this. We were stocking and selling all the Focal drivers.
I didn't know that.
Cabas, several other product that we were PHL, I think, and Raven tweeters.
Yeah.
All that stuff. We were stocking all that stuff that we would get from Orca. And there was a love-hate relationship for me with that Focal tweeter. You know, that titanium inverted dome.
Yeah.
It had big, wide dispersion.
Yeah.
And if the electronics were a little harsh, aggressive, or if you had an aluminum foil cap on it.
It would let you know.
Yeah, and that room was untreated. You were like, oh, man, that tweeter's, ugh. But if you put an audio cap theta on it, which was a tinfoil cap, which is a film and foil, and you use it with tube gear, and then your room's treated.
Yeah.
That tweeter would reward you, but you had to know what worked with those drivers.
Yeah.
You know, if you just went at it and you never listened.
Not a matter of just buying the speakers and who knows. You have to have a plan in place as to what
that stuff comes in now. You
Yeah.
know, I already know what those parts are doing to it, and I know what not to put on it, and I know what will work with it. So
Yeah.
I don't have to go back. I don't have to listen to it stock and then listen to it after I've fixed all these problems and put these higher quality parts in there to decide, does the car ride better with air in the tires or not? You know, it's like, hey, it's a given. I already know what's going to happen. So,
is there any parts that you can think of inside a loudspeaker that doesn't make a difference in terms of what's in the signal path? Does it all make a difference?
It all makes a difference.
Are there things that you feel make more of a difference than others? Does an inductor make more of a difference than a cap? Does a cap make more?
Yeah. There's a bigger range of variances and how the parts and parts in general with capacitors.
Okay.
Capacitors can be anywhere from it can totally smear the signal to unbelievable clarity as if there's nothing in the signal path.
let's pause. Define smearing for you, because I want to make sure that we're on the same.
Smearing for me is when notes run into each other.
Okay.
Where you don't hear...
Like stretching out taffy. It's like...
Yeah, you hear the piano and you hear the ring of that note just kind of strung into the next note. You hear the overall sound.
Okay.
But you don't hear the decay of each thing. When you remove the smearing, now you hear the decay of the instrument that was in the recording. And that's just kind of a quick and dirty, easy way to spot it immediately. It's like, you just listen for the decay.
Got it.
You know, you hear the decay of a drum hit. Boom. You hear the
Totally.
hit of it, and you hear it decay. It's like, that's such clarity. Versus another speaker may just reproduce a boom, and it was like, what happened to that drum? You know, it smeared all of that. You know, so yeah, parts lead to, you know, they can be one way or another, and capacitors are the biggie. The other big thing is that would be behind that. To me, it's the differences in different binding posts versus tube connectors and things like that. That's sometimes can be a really noticeable difference in clarity.
I know that your tube connectors can ruffle some feathers. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about... I think I might name this Understanding Danny Richie. Because I think if people can begin to understand you,
Right.
they might calm down a little bit and go, okay, I see where he's going with this. What is the concept behind a tube connector?
Yeah.
What is the concept? Like, why does a tube connector exist?
Right.
And what makes it great?
Well, it starts with a problem.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those things that solves a problem. And I've for years, any of us that are in the industry have fought with different binding posts and how to mount them. And of course, you get the real cheapies that are on a cup.
Yeah.
They're brass. A lot of them will have terminal tabs. Those are tin, and they'll have a steel nut on it. So
Yeah.
it's a whole bunch of different types of material in the signal path. So
Yes.
the signal passes through those different types of material differently.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those little toys where it has little balls all in a line and they're all hanging.
Yeah.
And you pull one back and
Bonk,
one pops
bonk,
off the
bonk.
other end,
Yep.
back and forth.
Yep.
Ideally, that's what you're doing with the audio signal. You're hitting it on one end and that's coming off the other.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, back and forth, alternating current. Well, when you take a little sheet of paper or two or a T-shirt and you stick it between some of those balls in there that are bouncing back and forth, the energy doesn't transfer the same.
Yeah.
It'll hit on one end and it'll just kind of thud, a little bump on the other.
Right.
You know, it's the same way with different materials. You've got the signal passing through all that different material, and it passes through it differently. It's not maintaining that signal purity, and even the differences in the quality of the copper and the impurities in the copper. And one of the biggest impurities is just oxidation.
Okay.
Copper oxide. You get all of that in the copper, and it's non-conductive elements in there.
Yeah.
That are disruptive, versus you get one that's high purity copper. It transfers that signal better. And when you get to the levels where the system is at a really high resolution level,
Yeah.
those things really start becoming apparent. It's like, wow, that's not that subtle. So the binding posts became a bit of a stumbling block. And I hated installing some of the nicer ones like Cardus or Vampire posts into a speaker, and you had to get inside the speaker and tighten a nut up against it.
Yeah.
And then you had to tighten a lock nut against it. And you either had the option of, you either tried to solder to it, which was horrible, because it's a big mass, or you solder to a little ring that's attached to it. And neither were good options. And so the whole binding post was a problem.
Okay.
You know, ideally you want the same speaker cable going all the way to the crossover. You don't want that insertion loss. And it was apparent when you went from a little binding post cup to some Vampire or WBT or Cardus. You got to get into those higher quality binding posts.
Yeah.
And you noticed a difference in clarity. You know, a lot of those were pure copper, and they didn't have steel nuts on them. You know, those would be copper or brass. And there was a difference there.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and I started thinking, how can I remove this from the signal path? How can we get all of that out? What would be the best alternative to not having it in there?
Yeah.
So basically a tube connector allows the internal speaker wire and the external speaker wire to be like this, tip to tip.
Yeah.
With just a low mass copper tube around it.
Wrapping around it,
and all copper.
So low mass, high contact area, high purity copper. Yeah. There's no tin. There's no all of these issues that you saw.
Sure.
That you feel degrade the signal.
They're all gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
This is the purpose and the point of a tube connector is.
Yeah, and I have lots of customers buying those things. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of them been out there.
Yeah.
And I get lots of feedback on them. And
I
always tell them, I say, hey, instead of replacing your binding post, drill some new holes and mount it right above or below them and run a little jumper from your binding post over to that tube connector.
And you let me know.
Yeah, you let me know when you A/B those.
If you can tell any kind of a difference.
Oh, yeah. I get lots of calls and emails back saying, wow, I trusted you. I thought there'd be a difference, but I didn't know there'd be that big a difference.
Interesting.
So that stuff matters. I know there's a group of guys out there that think if they can't measure a difference, it can't sound different, but that's just not the case.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because it's been interesting over the year that you've been on YouTube to see so many folks think he doesn't believe in measurements because it's almost like you believe in speaker measurements, but when it comes to parts, well, this capacitor measures exactly the same as another capacitor, and this inductor measures. There's no way that that's going to make any kind of a difference. And it's been interesting getting to know you and even placing faith in what you've said over the years of like, give this a go, try this. And even as a customer of yours, like buying my Enexoticas and, Encores and things like that, experiencing that, it's been an eye-opener. And it was, Randy and I were talking about this earlier, and he's even at a point now, and he's been busting through so much stuff, and he's like, there's no question in my mind that two things are very real: break-in and parts. Like those two things, and it's like nobody wants to talk about either of those two things.
Right.
And it's been interesting to experience that, for myself. And the biggest thing that I learned very quickly is, you do need to have a decent rig, but I feel people are always listening for the wrong things. They don't know what to be listening for.
That's true.
And they're not even setting up their system that would allow them to hear those things.
That's true.
You just walk through my new listening room, and the speakers are 7 feet out into the room,
right.
And a lot of people, when I put up videos, are like, that's crazy, that's insane, that's nuts. And it's like,
no, for some of us, that's normal.
That's pretty. I wish I could have gone a little bit further,
Yeah, it's like once you've been there, it's like you can't go back. There's no pushing those speakers back to the wall because it'll just sound like it's playing from the wall.
Yeah. Randy's not there yet. He's like, why don't you just put those up against a wall like a normal person? I was like, because I'm not a normal person.
No. I've gotten that way where, to me, so much of the enjoyment of listening to that music is the three-dimensional aspect of it.
Yeah.
The depth and layering in the soundstage. And once you're there, it's fun to change out a speaker cable or a different amp and different things and notice how much differences there are in those areas.
Like,
wow. There's separation there between stuff. Like, you were at my place one day and we threw on the intro on a Nirvana song.
Yeah.
That you knew pretty well.
Yeah.
And you immediately thought, wow, there's space between those two guitars. There's a layering there.
The song is Heart-Shaped Box. It's off the album In Utero. Right. And the funny thing about it, Danny, is that when Randy was here earlier, I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways.
They're talking about me.
No, with these ELACs, which are fine. I mean, they're fine speakers.
Yeah.
I was telling him the story of when I heard them in your system with the In Extremes, and I was like, there is clearly two different guitars that are playing against each other, and they're slightly out of time. And he's like, what? And he's like, play that song. And we actually had a hard time hearing it. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't like hearing it with the in extremes on your rig. It
Oh
was
yeah, it's like you just put 4 feet between them.
I was trying to explain. I think he looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, no. I'm telling you, there's some distance between those two guitars, and that when you hear that, you can't unhear it. And when you go back to hearing it like this, where it's a little bit more closer and it's harder to like, it's weird.
I remember we just swapped out speaker cables to some 12 gauge zip cord or something, and all of a sudden they were on top of each other.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that space between them, and it just go unnoticed. And one of my employees, he's a big Nirvana fan too.
Yeah.
Killian, he listened to it. He listened to a lot of the Nirvana stuff, and the moment that song played, it was instant
eyes open.
I've never heard that before. Those two guitars are not in time.
Yeah.
It's like if they'd have heard that in the studio, he's thinking they might have pulled those together and cleaned it up, and they didn't. But of course, you never know. The artist may want it that way.
They might, yeah.
But
who knows?
It was one of those things that's like hearing artifacts in the music you just didn't realize was there, and he thought that was crazy. And then we did the same thing when you were there.
Yeah.
We swapped out speaker cables and went, okay.
Yeah.
Now you can't even hear the space between them. They're just playing there together on top of each other.
Yeah.
But you switch back to the other speaker cable, it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There's space there. So what you're doing is you're going into that time domain.
Yeah.
And you're cleaning up those things that are riding along with that signal.
Yeah.
That are smearing it. We're going in and we're taking that noise out.
Yeah.
And all of that, and then all of a sudden, you hear what's on the recording.
So this is the main thing that I wanted to kind of lead into, and it's a perfect segue. So I think that what people do when they start listening to like cables, right, or different parts, they're listening for tone, and they're expecting to hear like, is there more bass? Is there more mid bass? Is there more mid range? Is there more? Yeah. It's like no. What you just said has been my experience.
Right.
Like it's like. Use so many. I mean, my Lots video is now well over 100,000, and the comments are just. They're like, "This is a big deal." I'm hearing my system in a completely different way, and I'm like, "Now, tell me that a cable doesn't make a difference."
Right.
And if you still don't feel that way, fine, okay, cool, no problem. I'm not going to pick a fight with you, but now give it a go, because I think what's happening. This is where what my heart tells me is. People are trying to hear differences in systems where they're not pulled out in the room. They can't hear it. They're trying to listen for tone shifts. They're trying to hear.
Sure.
And they're not. So it's like they're honestly stumped. Like these guys are full of it.
Just watch the comments from the flat earthers. They
oh no! Here comes the flat Earth comments.
Oh man. They always say, well. Take a frequency response measurement.
Yeah, no.
And compare. There's no difference in the frequency response. That's just amplitude.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it louder when you change to a different cable.
Right.
The only possible way it could get any louder is if you're lowering the resistance a little bit, and then you're going to see it typically down in the lower ranges, and it may be a hundredth of a dB or something. You're not going to see it across amplitude. It's all in the space. It's in decay. That's where you hear that stuff. And if, like you said, if their speakers are sitting against the wall, they're not creating that 3-dimensional sound field to begin with.
No.
You drop something in there that enhances that, something that they don't even have to begin with. It's chances are they may not even notice it at all.
Yeah. It breaks my heart, because it's like, dude, I don't even want to talk to you about cables right now. I just want you to start experiencing hi-fi, because you start doing some stuff and moving some speakers out. You're gonna enjoy this so much more.
It's like you can't get them to step 10.
No,
when they still got step 1 and 2 to get over.
It's like
they're not there yet. Where I look at those pictures, a customer send me pictures all the time. Here's a picture of my speakers, and what I'm looking at is the room.
The room.
I'm thinking, man. You got a bare wall behind those things. Yeah. You got nothing in the corners. I could take the best sounding speakers in the world and set them right where theirs are. And they'll be nowhere close to where they'd be if they had, just a budget pair of speakers with the room treated and them out in the room to where they can recreate that stuff. And then they're going to start hearing differences when they start going up the ladder. They start getting into different amps and gear and cables, and yeah, you have to have all those foundations in place, or it just doesn't matter.
Is the room the most important thing?
I'd say speakers in room. Those are
paramount.
Yeah, those are the same thing. I mean, that you can't really separate the speaker from the room. It's the room response is what you hear.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just hear the sound from each speaker. You'd have to get in an anechoic chamber to just hear those speakers.
Yeah, and you're not going to enjoy that. People think they will, but they're not.
Won't sound right.
It's not.
You're hearing the room response.
Yeah.
So you can't separate that speaker from that room. It's that response you hear is all part of it. So you have to treat those things together. It's like you can't just go out and buy a great set of speakers, and you see it at the shows. And you'll go to a show, and there'll be big companies that have great products.
Oh, yeah.
There's
tower speakers in there, and
they're in an empty room.
Gear loaded to the teeth, and
you just hear this big,
not one panel in
boomy sound going on. Like, man, this sounds boomy as can be, man.
Yeah.
Like, this is awful.
Oh, man. That's funny.
And then you'll see companies that have the speakers out in the room. They've treated the room. They've done their homework. They know how to set things up. And wow, good sound. You know, even lots of companies do a good job. I went to the Rocky Mountain Audio Festival one time, and the guys from Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan speakers. Yeah,
Ryan speakers were there.
Yeah, Todd and Trevor. Shout out to Todd and Trevor.
Yeah, those guys had a fantastic room.
They always do treatment.
Yeah.
Always bring panels.
There was no...
And they always measure. They always get in there and they do room measurements and figure out where problems are.
You know, I wasn't just like blown away that this was the most... But there was no problems.
No.
This was... I could have just sit there all day and listen to music.
Yeah.
Like, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and
I love those guys. They do a great job.
They set everything up right. And there's just a lot of those smaller companies, they go in there and they're the ones that put their heart and soul into it. You know, some of the guys you see with these big companies... There's 10 guys that work there, and they brought it in, and they set the stuff up.
They're waiting for the doctor or the lawyer to walk in. Yeah.
You know, sometimes the people who even designed those products, they're not even there.
Yeah.
Right. You never even see those people. They just come in and set it up and turn it on and buy big page reviews or buy big magazine ads, you know, and
that's that.
That's that, man.
Wow. I feel like the industry is gonna be changing here sooner than later. I feel like there's shifts, there's changes. It's taking forever, but it's interesting to see so many reviewers on YouTube now. I'm seeing even magazine companies starting to do videos, you know, and that's promising. That's good, you know. It's like you can't...
They're trying. It's
can't hide behind creative writing when you're staring at a camera. It's like...
you have to be honest. People can see your honesty.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah, or not.
Yeah. And there's a lot of those guys who've been great reviewers or, you know, really astound reviewers, you know.
Yeah.
Held a high regard for all these years that you never see.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't really know what kind of person they really are, how they're really listening and what they're listening for. And,
sure.
You know, and there's good reviewers out there, but
for sure, yeah.
Then there's, you know, some of these guys that you wouldn't want to put them in front of a camera.
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't sell their anybody's product. That's for sure.
How has YouTube changed GR research?
Oh yeah, it's been awesome. It's, you know, you mentioned that the industry's changing. It's a long process to educate people to everything, like pulling your speakers out of the room, treating your room. It's a long process of creating that education. And prior to YouTube, it was hard to do.
Yeah.
You know, I was fortunate that we've had a really well-established forum on Audio Circle. And a lot of people visit our forum there.
Yeah.
And discuss
one of the biggest forums there, one of the most popular for sure.
It was I think the second most popular. I think the Bryson forum has more posts, but it was a user forum and was already big before Bryson came in and said we'd like to be, you know, part of it. So they kind of had a head start there. But yeah, we're one of the largest ones there, and we've established a community there. There's customers who are there every day.
Yeah.
And they love what they're doing. They love audio.
Posting galleries.
And people don't realize what a huge resource that is for information.
Oh, for sure.
But it doesn't reach the number of people that YouTube reaches.
Yeah.
You know, I do a video on YouTube and I could get 6,000 or 8,000, maybe 10,000 views the first day.
Yeah.
And it's reaching an audience that would never read a magazine.
Yeah.
You know, the younger audience, they don't care. They don't care about stereophile or, you know, the absolute sound. They don't read magazines anymore. They want it on their phone or on their computer. They want instant information.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what drew me to you originally when I saw you doing video reviews and I started watching it. I thought, wow, this guy's going to totally change the industry. He's reaching people that would never even have the opportunity to go to an audio store, because the stores are so far and few between anymore.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and here's real, honest, immediate feedback.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can't hide it. If you like the product, you're like, wow, this is great. Or, you know, yeah, you can't hide it. It's like
You can be diplomatic.
you can be diplomatic. Yeah, you're pretty good at being diplomatic.
It takes time to.
I'm not so diplomatic.
No,
people.
I think you've ruffled some feathers.
I've probably ruffled some feathers, but it's like, you know what? I'm just going to be honest and tell it like it is, and
I admire that about you. I admire that about you.
Yeah, it's just.
I think what it is that people they take it personal, or they bring their feelings into it, and it's like getting back to what we were saying is, if you begin to understand what you're trying to accomplish, then there is no reason to be upset. It's like, listen, this speaker has some fundamental flaws. It's not. This isn't. There's some real problems here that need to be addressed, you know? And I even remember early on in my reviews, there was a particular speaker that I heard something that I couldn't put my finger on. I wasn't experienced enough to understand what the heck was going on. And I even remember, I think it was one of the first times, I don't know how we crossed paths, but somehow you and I got on the phone and we were talking about it. And you're
I think I remember that.
You're like, I know exactly.
I know what it is.
I know exactly what the problem is. And I'm not going to give away what speakers. It doesn't matter at this point. But nevertheless, it became kind of a challenge for me. And it was a turning point in my review career, as it were, because a lot of times the manufacturer, they believe with all their heart they have sent you a jet fighter. It's like, here is a jet fighter. And you want to believe it's a jet fighter.
Yep.
And you get into this jet fighter, and you get it up off the ground, and it flies.
It's no jet fighter.
It's not a jet fighter. It's more of a glider.
Yeah.
It's like, it flies. It plays music. It's a glider. I wouldn't call this a jet fighter. And they don't really love to hear that.
Oh, I've seen it a lot. I've had companies bring stuff in where they've been to shows, and they make a trip through Texas on their way back to where they're going, and they bring in stuff. They say, and there was a guy, and I won't mention his name, of course, but he was so pumped. Oh, man, everybody loved it at the show, and these things are so awesome.
This is the greatest thing ever.
And I don't think they'd ever been measured. He had designed them by ear and everything else, and then I thought, okay, I set them up and just went through the basic measurements. There was some woofer breakup. There was some. The drivers weren't quite in phase. There was some box resonances that were pretty bad. And you could see it in the impedance curve. There was. And by the time we were done looking at the measurements, he said, "Don't tell anybody." It's like,
keep this between you and me.
Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't have any reason to, to share this information. This, when companies bring their stuff in, it's pretty confidential information.
Yeah. You're like, hey, have you thought about fixing it?
Yeah. It's like, man, come on, man.
Yeah.
So that happens. There's guys that they've listened, and they've gone as far as they can with their knowledge of a crossover, simple crossovers, first order slopes or something like that.
Yeah, sure. And it's great they want to learn, and that's awesome and everything. But
yeah, I think some of the problem is too, they don't have a really high standard of something they're comparing it to.
Sure.
If they have a high standard that's a perfect speaker, and when I say perfect, in the way that it measures, no problems, and it performs really well, it can kind of be a benchmark. And then you can compare whatever you're building to whatever that benchmark is. A lot of these guys just don't have that benchmark, so they think that where they've reached, it's the best they've ever done, but they're not really comparing it to everything else.
Yeah.
So that's a major hurdle, and I see that sometimes with stuff that's come in.
Do you think when you're solving problems and you're working on a loudspeaker and you're fixing the issues, you're always going for a straight line, essentially, or something that is relatively linear, right? You're trying to get things to behave in a way where you have a linear response.
Right.
I've seen a lot of the comments that crop up that say, "That's boring. Speakers that are flat are boring. Why are you making boring speakers? You should do a smiley face EQ or whatever."
Right.
What do you say about that?
That usually has very little to do with how the speaker sounds.
Yeah.
Whether the level of accuracy is what we're looking at. That's not reflection of how it sounds. 'Cause, I could make that line a flat line with all those cheap parts.
Yeah.
And it would be boring.
Yeah.
It would be lifeless. The notes are all smeared from one to the other. It would be dull.
Yeah.
Or I can use much higher quality parts, and you may have excitement in every regard. You're hearing things you've never even heard before.
Yeah.
It's all about all the little things that make it sound the way it sounds. It's not because it has a flat frequency response, it's going to sound flat.
Yeah.
You've heard a lot of my speakers now.
Yeah.
You've heard them in my listening room. You've heard them in your
boring is not a great way to describe any of your loudspeakers.
Probably not.
Randy and I were talking about that earlier. Like, he's like, Encores are like the clarity king for him, with the stuff that he's reviewed, which is really up to $1,000, and it's like, he's like, when it comes to like excitement and getting some detail out of stuff, he chooses the Encores. That's what he runs. And
it's fun to watch people that have come in from all over the country. They'll travel here because they want to hear. So I had another one from the Oklahoma City area. He came through on vacation and he had to stop at GR Research. He booked it weeks and weeks in advance. He's wanting to come, and it's fun to watch people that even they've been in the industry for a long time, or they think they've got a pretty nice system at home. Yeah, and they just sit down and listen. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this level existed. And it's always the same reaction. They get so excited. Yeah. And they want to hear another song and another, and something else that they know, and they're just overwhelmed with excitement. Yeah. And that's not dull and boring because it's a flat response. If you measure the response on the speakers they're listening to, it's an accurate response. It's pretty flat. Yeah. But anything but boring. I had a guy one time, and I think I told you about this incident. He summed it up better than I've ever heard. I thought, wow, I've never thought of that. He sat and listened to my system for about an hour, and he was just grinning, and he says, "Danny, have you ever shot any tannerite?" What? I said, "I've not shot tannerite, but I know exactly what it is. My son-in-law and my friends, they shoot tannerite. And my neighbors that live all around me, sometimes you hear them shooting some tannerite. And it's a powder. You can buy it at Walmart. You can buy it at Academy. You mix in the powder and you shake it up and you set that stuff out there 200 yards away and you shoot it with a high velocity round. And buddy, it blows up. Boom! I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's shaking things miles away. Yeah, it's a big explosion. It's a big boom. Oh yeah, you can YouTube it and watch crazy stuff being blown up by tannerite. And down here it's just commonly available, and it's like redneck fireworks. You know, they'll blow stumps up out of the ground with it, or anything that they need tore up or blown up. Tannerite. And this guy's he's a shooter. Yeah. He goes out and he's got his weapon collection, and he's a shooter, and he's telling me about the first time he ever shot tannerite, and he says, "Man, I can't believe this. This is so cool." He says, "This shouldn't even be legal." There's a lot of people that would say it probably shouldn't be legal. Yeah. But he was, that he's just so giddy. Yeah. He said, "That's the way I feel." Yeah. I sit in here listening to this music. It's dynamite. He said it was like first time I shot off tannerite. Yeah. I thought that's pretty cool. That's awesome. I would have never even thought of that. That was a pretty neat way to describe his feelings while he was there listening to that system. So, yeah, is it dull and boring because it's flat? No. It can have a flat frequency response. That's just about the accuracy. Yeah. And there's times I'll alter it because I'm looking at the off-axis response. Yeah. If you're seeing a little peak at 3K in the off-axis response, you may go in the on axis and think, well, let me just drop it a little bit right there
to help it with
to
the
help
off
balance
axis.
it, because what they're going to hear is the room response and
hitting the reflections.
Yeah,
and,
there's a lot of times that I go in and I'll purposely soften an area, and there's some speakers that they just have a certain brightness within that crossover region, that 1K to 2K. And sometimes
it's a sensitive area.
It's just a sensitive area, and you may want to go in and just soften it right there just a little bit. Just drop it about half a dB right there.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into the tuning of it, where you're really listening, and you're listening to it in your room and thinking, how does it sound, and how do I feel about it compared to this other reference? Even though the two speakers you're comparing may both be accurate in that range, one could sound a little more forward or a little brighter in a certain area. And you'll go in and just soften it maybe in that area a little bit and just balance it out a little bit more.
Got it.
So it's in the end, the only thing that matters is how it sounds.
Yeah.
And everybody that sees me doing these upgrades and making all these fixes for some of these speakers, I'm just fixing problems, and then we're going in and putting better quality parts in it. So it's all about accuracy and not, how it sounds isn't what you see in the frequency response.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I know you, I will say this. Now, people that don't know you will just have to take my word for it, but you're one of the most honest people that I've ever met in my life. Honestly, on camera right now, would you say that of all of these kits, upgrades, things that you offer to customers, what are the returns like? What do you get? A lot of people that are like, I hated this. I don't like this. Actually, I don't even think it'd be a return, right? Like, they can't.
No, they can't return it.
They can't because they did it themselves.
They built it themselves, yeah.
I mean, is that, I got you. Or, do you get feedback of people who are like, I just don't like what this did?
I can't think of a time where I got negative feedback on anything. There's been a few guys that have upgraded some stuff and thought, I didn't notice that much difference, or it was it was this or that. But if you look at their system again, they didn't have a system really set up to where they could hear a lot of the differences.
Right.
Whereas overwhelmingly, I'll get, huge feedback on the same kit from a whole bunch of other people that all love it.
Yeah.
No, it's overwhelmingly good feedback on the stuff, and that's really what drives me. I mean, I'm driven to make products better.
Yeah.
I'm really not money driven.
Yeah.
That's secondary to the business. My goals have always been to kind of be the best, and that's it with anything I do. If you know me,
pretty competitive guy.
I'm really competitive. Throw me out there on the soccer field.
Disc golf. This guy will kick your ass.
Any kind of sport.
Yeah.
Drag racing.
Yeah.
Sprinting. I do the track and field thing, and
yeah.
A buddy of mine was talking to my wife one time about that. He's kind of grew up with me, knew me from high school, and they were talking. I was messing around. I was 10, 15 feet away, and I heard them talking, and my buddy says, I can sum Danny up real easy when it comes to sports. He said, you give Danny a ball and a stick, and he's going to make a game out of it, and he's going to whip you at it.
He's going to beat you bad.
He said, that's the way he is. And that's true, and that carries over into audio, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm driven to try and make
the best that you possibly can.
Every kit that we offer, I feel like it has to be the best that there is at that price point when looking at the rest of the market, or it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
If it isn't good enough, then why would I throw it out there and put my name on it? It doesn't make any sense.
I have two more things I want to ask you. Open baffle for you, is it king? I mean, if you're thinking about the next GR Research speaker, is it a box speaker, or is it another open baffle speaker?
Surprisingly, I'm still coming up with more new models that are more towards box speakers, because there's more application for a lot of that. I've got two new models that we're about to release pretty quick. That's one's a desktop speaker, and the other's the new Bravo, which is the smaller version of the XLS Encore. It's the same tweeter and it's the M130 woofer.
Awesome.
You know, I'm redoing a lot of those AV series products in the X series with the new tweeters. So I'm really doing more new stuff in applications like that because a lot of the new customers, a lot of the younger people, a lot of the people we're reaching aren't ready to buy in extremes.
Yeah.
You know, they're not ready to spend.
They're looking
$8,000.
for the bridge.
They're looking for that bridge. They're looking what's the entry point into this hobby.
Yeah.
And so I've always been in a way that poor college kid.
Yeah.
Because I was that poor college kid that wanted the best
nice,
sounding audio system, but I didn't
right.
have any money.
Yeah.
You know, so I was figuring out which for the money and this and that, and it's been like that for a lot of things. You know, how can I make the most out of almost nothing? You know.
Yeah.
So my heart is still there. I really want to offer those lower price point products that get people well into the next level, then they come to me and say, "Now I want that in Exotica or that in Extreme that I heard when I was at your house or something," and you have to give them those entry points or they're never going to get there. If you're just a high-end only company, you're never going to reach those people and you're never going to educate them. You're never going to bring them up to those performance levels if you don't get them in the door.
Yeah.
But when it comes to all-out performance, to answer your question, open baffle is king.
Yeah.
I mean, you get into high-quality everything in an open baffle, there's no going back.
No.
I mean, once you've experienced that, you hear the box on every other box speaker that you listen to. It's still there.
Try being a reviewer after you've heard open baffle
I told
speakers. It's not so easy.
I remember when I was really impressed with your channel and what you were doing. And you had done some stuff with me, and at some point you ordered in Exoticas.
Yeah.
And I said, you're going to be ruined.
Yeah.
You're really going to be ruined as a reviewer. You're about to move your bar so high that it's going to be hard to review stuff. And I don't know what you thought of me telling you that. You probably thought, whatever. Yeah. I thought, you just wait. Yeah. You get into really good open baffle, man, it's hard to go back. Yeah. I mean, across the board, top to bottom, highs to lows to bass especially in the bass. I mean, and you got tight controlled bottom end and there's no room boom.
No.
And there's no cabinet resonances.
No.
There's no coloration, and you get used to that. You just go listen to almost anything.
Instantly you hear a box.
And then there's companies out there that lightly construct a lot of their speakers designs, and the boxes are really singing.
They're like an instrument all in themselves.
They're an instrument. I've had quite a few come in recently that were like that. I had a guy bring in a Fostech design or two with that was a horn at the bottom. And I had some Klipsch Lascalis come in.
Lascalis you had?
I did.
Wow.
And I run impedance sweeps on them, and I'm thinking, I can see the peak in the impedance, and I'm thinking, that cabinet wall resonance is so bad. It's showing up in the impedance curves. And I said, watch, at 130, there's a series resonance, and there's one at 180. And so I'll say, watch this. And I'll run a sine wave through the speaker, and I'll say, okay, let's start at 40, and we'll go 50 and 60. And you can hear the speaker playing, and it's a high-efficiency speaker, so you can hear it playing it. And then all of a sudden, it hits 130.
The whole thing comes to life.
Oh, yeah, it's like the whole thing lit up, and the customers, I went, wow. Like, oh, my goodness. And, and at 180,
same thing.
You're way up there. Oh, man, it was buzzing. And that one with the Fostech driver and that whatever that folded horn thing was, whoa, man, that in the impedance, it had a spike that went up, 20 ohms, and I'm thinking,
there's something going on here.
That's a resonance right there, and boy, did it light up at that frequency.
Yeah,
it was crazy. I did one of the speakers. I can't remember which one it was. I did a frequency response. And when I'm measuring the speakers, I'll have the speakers on a stand or on a lift table, and they're in front of me, and the microphone is at the other side of it. So I'm hearing the back side of the speaker.
Yeah.
And one of the little stand-mounted speakers had it was rear ported, and I just hit a frequency response, just a psh, and I thought, ooh, man, what the heck? I could hear the port resonance. The port resonance was really pronounced. I thought, you got to be kidding me, man.
Wow.
And you know that listening to music through that thing is just going to be so colored at that frequency.
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck? And you could see it in the impedance curve. Right at the tuning frequency of the port, you see on a ported speaker, you'll see two humps. You'll see the rise on each side, and the tuning frequency is the trough. And right there at the bottom, there was a big dip that just spiked that went down, and you think, yeah, that's what I was hearing.
Wow.
You could hear it in that thing clear as day, man. Wow. It's like, ooh, I had to push it again. Push it again. Wow. That port is really outputting some noise.
Wow.
You know, so, yeah, you have to wonder sometimes on some of these stuff. But you get used to open baffle.
Yeah.
None of that stuff's there.
It's gone.
And then, like I said, you hear a speaker that's got real issues, you can't get past it.
Yeah.
You can't unhear it, and it's there in everything. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how great the vocal are, how great the detail is. It's man, there's coloration right there, and it's you can't listen to it.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to listen to music while somebody's holding a flashlight in your face.
Yeah. You can't. It gets annoying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing that I would want to ask you is, putting you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you $1,500,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to go to GR Research. What speakers are you going to buy?
Wow, $1,500, huh?
Yep. Which speaker kit would Danny Richie buy?
I'd build out a pair of Ecstatics.
I knew you were going to say that. You son of a gun.
I would. I'd build out a pair of Ecstatics.
Okay.
They're like my favorite speaker in that X series.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've never heard those, so...
Yeah, you got to get... You're spending more money to get into the NX series. Well, the NX Studio monitor is in that price range.
It is. Yeah.
But the overall of it is just... It's fun.
Yeah.
High sensitivity.
Yeah.
Open baffle mid-range. I love the mid-range. Good dynamics. It's good for home theater. It's good for 2-channel. It's like... That's just a fun speaker.
Yeah.
You can enjoy...
It's a bit of a hybrid open baffle. It's a really cool design.
Yeah, whereas like the studio monitors, they're more accurate. They're more detailed. They're more, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Listen to that vocal. But then it's not the speaker you go to for crank up some AC/DC, you know, to really bring the levels up. It's more for small rooms, mixing, mastering. It's a different kind of speaker. The Ecstatic is more of a fun speaker.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd probably go for Ecstatic.
Ecstatic.
Wasn't surprised on that, huh?
Not at all. Not one bit.
We're about to build some out too. We're going to do some videos on go through the build process. Killian's building me some boxes, and
that's cool.
And they're going in my listening room, in my living room. I'm going to put an Ex Voce and some Ecstatics in there because that's.
Let me know. I'll drive on over and listen to them.
Fun for watching movies and stuff like that with those speakers.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's cool.
All right, you got anything else for me?
I got nothing, man.
We probably went longer than you thought.
I can't even see it. My eyes are going bad.
This is fun.
Yeah.
All right.
We're done here. All right, folks. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. We'll probably release this. Might as well release it on maybe even both of our channels if you want.
Good.
If you want it, you can have it. But yeah, it'll be on my channel for sure.
See you, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Everybody. He laughs at me for saying
I've
hey,
heard
everybody.
it so many times, man.
I can't not say it now.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
My whole family, Georgia actually says now, hey, everybody. And then she calls me Mr. Danny. Mr. Danny.
Yep.
All right, guys.
See you, everybody.
We'll see ya. Thank you.